Yo, what is good, family? Appreciate you being here, man. Hope everybody is doing well. If we haven't met yet, my name's MC. And just know it's my hope and prayer that you leave out this video today learning something new, gaining a new perspective, or being challenged enough or convicted enough to change in some area of your life for the better. And again, leave out today being better than you were coming in. So again, thankful that you guys are here. And let's jump right into it, man. So this is just kind of interesting concept and something that I think kind of gets thrown around pretty casually in culture and in society, that, if you're being tempted or if you're going through a trial or a test, that it can be something directly from God. And 100% in agreement as far as certain storms that can be orchestrated by the Lord to kind of work as a test of faith and endurance to see how serious you are about coming to Him in times of need, in times of pain, in times of hurt, right? I think a perfect example of this is, when the disciples are riding out after the Sermon on the Mount, and, Jesus walks to them on water. And so it's like Jesus is the one who sent them out into the sea to sail to the other side, obviously knowing that the storm was going to incur. And, there's a lot of teachings in that segment of scripture, but ultimately, that's not the focal point of today's video. I just want to, kind of insert that up front that, God can orchestrate us to be in positions of testing or storms, again, to see where our faith truly lies. See if we'll come running back to Him and get closer to Him, right? Or trusting in things that our flesh might desire. Going to the club, hitting a bottle, binge watching movies, isolating ourselves, like whatever our personal vices, our fleshly vices are, so it's, I want to make that distinction again up front here, but ultimately the temptation piece is something that I just came across reading through the book of James, and just kind of wanted to share a little bit of a perspective on what James shares in his letter. And for those who don't know, James is and was a blood brother of Jesus. So Jesus was the oldest firstborn son of the Virgin Mary, and James was born to Mary as well. And so when Jesus was on the earth, growing up, before he really even got into his ministry, just imagine them being youngins running around, getting in trouble, right? Just being kids. And then you fast forward, you scale it out, Jesus starts his ministry, starts performing miracles, healings, all these signs, fulfilling all these prophecies. And scripture is clear that his brothers did not believe in him, James being one of them. James did not believe that his brother was actually the Messiah. So you fast forward now, it's about AD 45, so about 10 to 15 years after Christ has been crucified and resurrected. And now James writes this letter. And we're just going to be going through just a couple verses here. It's going to be in chapter 1, pretty much verses 12 through 15. And so I'll read through these here in a second, but again, just kind of paint the picture of the kind of the overarching question of like, all right, can God tempt you? Can God put you in positions to, again, have your flesh be tempted, right? Does that come from Him? Does that come from us? Does that come from the enemy? Like, where does all this come from? Because I've heard that said before, again, like just in society, people say like, oh yeah, God tempted me, or God put me in this position to be tempted. And I just want to make that distinction and clarify again, like testing versus temptation. So the storm piece, we've kind of already touched on that, but here is, the scripture just in regarding to the temptation side of things, and if God truly will put you in a really tough spot to be tempted. And here's a beautiful answer written by James. So again, starting in verse 12 here, he says, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to them that love him. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempt he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, brings forth death." Sheesh. It's fire, man. Just a couple things I just kind of want to unpack here, and then we'll be wrapping up. So first we see that a blessing is pronounced on the one that endures temptation, kind of essentially implying that everybody will be tempted. Everybody will face temptation in some form or another. James specifically talks about lust And there's a lot of things we can lust after. But ultimately, you do have a reward, and James specifies that he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised them to them that love him. So as hard as it may be when you're going through those moments of temptation, right? When it seems like almost impossible to get past it, you got to put your mind on the day of trial, right? He says when they are tried, for when he is tried, that day is like judgment day, essentially. If you endure temptation now, and you get through it, you don't give into it, you have an eternal reward waiting for you, which is the crown of life, right? It's a beautiful image, and it's kind of hard to get through sometimes, like just being real on a day-to-day. Like if you don't give in to temptation, I gotta wait for eternity to get my reward. Like I don't get anything right now. We live in such a society and culture of instant gratification where it's like, man, I want my reward now. It's my money, I need it now. If you know, you know. I just think it's beautiful that James points us to that, right? To that eternal reward. Just got to endure right now, as hard as it may be. But moving through the verses here, I think it's just so beautiful, the kind of the picture that he paints in 13 and 14. So he says, let no man or woman say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God or from God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither he tempt any man. So this is black and white, right? This is super clear that God will not tempt you, answers the question straight up. Like God will not tempt you. Again, he might test you and put you through scenarios and seasons of trials and tribulations to see how faithful you are to him, but he will not put you in a position to be tempted. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. So we see it's not just one thing to blame God for being tempted. Like we clearly see that does not come from him, but it comes from us. This is one of those scriptures where you really got to look in the mirror like, man, all right, I guess it's not from you, God. I guess, it's truly my flesh. It's truly that deep down desire to go in and be in these situations where I'm around things that my flesh want, right? For my men, my brothers out there, like, you know what to expect if you go to certain places, certain bars, certain restaurants, certain clubs, certain environments, right? You know what you're getting into when you go in there. And in the back of your mind, like you try and quiet that voice inside your head, like, oh man, I know it's gonna be certain girls there that's gonna be wearing certain type of clothes, and like, all right, I know I got my girl at home or my wife at home, but it's all right. Like I'm not gonna fall into it. I'll be fine. Like I'll just go there, but it's not gonna hurt me too much. It's not gonna affect me that much, right? And this is internal dialogue, more or less, right? Of course, that's just like a quick example, but essentially it's just the overall picture again here is like, that's not coming from God, that's us. Like we're putting ourselves in these positions to go and be in spots of temptation and dealing with that, right? That comes from our own lust, our own flesh, okay, not God. And then last thing I want to touch on here is just the ultimate result of that, of sin, of when we give into that temptation, no matter what it's in. Again, here specifically talking about lust, but what happens when we do say yes, when we do give in to temptation? Verse 15 is very clear on that. When it is finished, bringeth forth death. That's what happens when you give into sin, when you give into lust, when you give into temptation, right? Essentially nothing good can happen to that. Death, right? Could be spiritual death, could be the ending of a relationship, could literally end in like somebody getting in a physical altercation, or even worse, like some type of violence to where actual death occurs of you, right? How many times do we see that in society, man? Like somebody goes out, somebody, flirting with somebody at a club, and it escalates like more than just a fight, right? And then somebody ends up dying from it as a result. Again, just walking through some like brief overviews and examples of this, but I just hope that concept really sits with you guys today, where like temptation will come, but it does not come from God. We then have the choice to say if we give into it or if we push through it. If we push through it, make it past our temptation, we have an eternal reward, which is the crown of life waiting for us. That's promised to us, right? If we do not, if we give into sin, if we give into lust, if we give into temptation, that again, we put ourselves in the first place, death is the result. Like we're just gonna put ourselves in a terrible position. And so as enticing as it may be, as hard as it may be to say no to yourself and to move past that, I just hope next time you guys struggle with this, that you can lean into these scriptures, lean into these verses, or just have a thought come in like, man, if I give into it, like what's the end result gonna be, right? Play the whole scenario out. Once you're dealing with somebody or put in a position of potential lust or temptation, like we all struggle with different things to different degrees. Like, you know, that one area, there's a handful of areas that you struggle with that are really, really hard to get by for you, right? So play the whole scenario out. Next time you're in that spot, like if you're gonna be dealing with temptation and you say yes to it, what happens after that? And then what happens after that? And then what happens the next night? What happens the next day? What happens the next week, right? Play the whole scenario out. And I promise you, it's gonna make you rethink the decision you make before you get into a bad position. But that's all I got for y'all today, man. I hope you guys enjoyed. For real. I love y'all and I appreciate you being here. But until next time, peace.